Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World Series of Board Gaming's designer interview series hosted on the Dice Tower. My name is Chris George.
And I am Brian Muller.
Or, as our friends like to call us, La Chrismosa.
And Batoku Brian.
Yeah, I think mine is better than yours this week, Brian. I think
You got me
pretty excited. But next time, who knows? I think you might have it. For those of you who are tuning in and haven't tuned into the rest of the series, this is where we interview a bunch of different designers who are across our industry trying to highlight the people who create the games that we love. And so what we're doing, we've done this in the past with Stronghold Games, we're doing it again with Devir Games and bringing you sort of the history of Devir and a glimpse into what it's like to run a publishing company. And so in a moment, we'll be on the line with Matt Hyland, who's a managing partner at Devir Games, and he's going to tell us all about his role and what Devir has going on. And I'm excited about this. I like our designer series so much, looking at the game design aspect of it, because obviously I love mechanics, but I'm interested in a wide breadth of the hobby as well. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, definitely. I found this series to be very interesting as well, too, with the publishers, because we get to learn about all their different roles, from distribution to development to publishing, and their relationships with their game designers and how they find their talent. All that stuff is real interesting.
Yeah,
definitely different spin from the designer angle of things. So.
Yeah, it's just a different perspective, right? And putting together all the aspects of the hobby that maybe we don't consider when we're just playing a game that's in front of us and we're enjoying that experience, because there's a whole teams of people working hard to get you the gaming experience that you love. And speaking of gaming experiences that you will love, well, of course, don't worry. There still is time to get your tickets to the World Series of Board Gaming happening September 24th to the 28th in Las Vegas at the Horseshoe Casino. We're going to be there. Tom Vassell, Z Garcia, Camilla Cleghorn, they're all going to be there. And we're very excited. If you don't have anything going on in September, or if you don't have an awesome gaming experience going on in September, you might as well come to the World Series of Board Gaming. Get your ticket. Make that last-minute plunge. And the reason why we're interviewing Devir is because we also have an awesome Outer Ring tournament, a Red Cathedral tournament, where you can win your plane ticket to Essen just by playing Red Cathedral. And then you're going to be playing in the Red Cathedral World Championship at Essen in 2024. We love chaining these sorts of things together and just breaking the hobby and creating that, breaking the hobby wide open and creating that all-encompassing, connection to everybody across the world. So that if you're interested in that, make sure to check it out at WSBGVegas.com. You can get your tickets there. And stay tuned into the end of this episode and this interview, because myself and Brian, we're going to tell you how you can win yourself a copy of the Red Cathedral just by watching the interview. It's true. We want to give things away to you because we love giving away stuff here at WSBG Vegas. That's true. But let's get us off the screen, or add somebody of higher esteem to the screen, and let's turn it over to Matt. And we're now joined by Matt Hyland. Matt, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're really excited to talk about all things Devir. As you know, we've got the Red Cathedral, the awesome Red Cathedral Outer Ring tournament that's happening in WSBG, with an incredible prize where you could win yourself your plane ticket to Essen and compete in Red Cathedral 2024. I just think I'm so thrilled, like from a World Series standpoint, to have you all on board. I personally love the Red Cathedral. I think it is such an incredible game, but we'll talk about more the Red Cathedral later. What I would love to start out, we've been doing this as a designer series and also kind of a publisher series. And so from that perspective, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, introduce yourself. What's your role at Devir? Potentially, how long have you been with the company? And give us sort of like a brief overview, if you can, of the history of Devir Games and what you stand for.
Wow, that's a pretty broad,
pretty open-ended question. But,
yeah. So let's start. Well, I'm a managing partner with the company. I've been with Devir since 2003, and I originally joined.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Devir really got its springboard into the industry as the exclusive distributors of Magic: The Gathering and Pokemon, but in Latin America. And so my job was to first set up distribution of trading card games for Devir into Spanish-speaking Latin America, because the company started in 1987, so in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a lot of people in North America don't think of us as this relatively new player in the scene, but and we are with our own English speaking games, but we've been around since then. And the guys who started the company were a bunch of Unisys engineers who really loved indie comics, and they
Cool.
realized that you couldn't get American indie comics in Brazil. So, sort of a funny story. They sent one of the guys with $5,000 in cash and put him on a plane to Houston. From there, he got on a bus, okay, like a Greyhound, with 5,000 bucks, and took it to Denver to what was Mile High Comics at the time, and bought their opening order. And so that's how they got started in this. And then since then, we got into publishing comics and RPGs and distributing Magic and other TCGs. Opened offices in Portugal and then Spain, and then in Florida to service Spanish-speaking Latin America, Chile, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Italy, and so now we have offices in all these different countries, and we're finally making a push into North America with our own proprietary line of English language games. So that's a little bit about the history of the Devir, who we are,
Yeah.
who we stand for. I don't know. I let some of my partners speak to that, but I think we try to think of ourselves in terms of an English language publisher or a games publisher. We try to do eclectic things, so we'll have games that are for really small kids, four and up, all the way to heavy war games. We have $10 games, we have $80 games, and so we're just trying to find things that are interesting and eclectic, and that we feel like we can do a good presentation. And that's pretty much where we're going as a publisher.
That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome in terms of that, like even just that wide swath. I always find myself surprised the more the different types of games that you do have. Anytime I'm at a store, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this game. I'm like, wait, that's Devir? Wait, this is Devir too? It's really incredible in terms of like the reach and the scope that you all have been plugging away at, really. And so you said that you were a managing partner. You've been that since 2003. So what would your sort of day-to-day job look like, or responsibilities be at the company? I'm sure it varies. I'm sure it varies very significantly.
It's a good question. It's all the day-to-day. Yeah, I tend to be kind of behind the scenes a lot. Originally my job was to develop these markets for our company, so Latin America in general, and then help with the opening of the office in Chile and all these other countries in Latin America. And right now, my role is more focused on North America than anything. I still am technically responsible for some of those other offices, but we have really good managers good territory managers and partners in our other offices, so they're on autopilot. They don't really need. I need to just get out of the way.
Right.
And now I'm focused a lot on building our business and for English language games, and building our North American business. And so it's a lot of marketing, some sales activities, and then of course the boring stuff like budgets and financing and all those other forecasts, all those other sorts of things that are less fun.
Or the really interesting stuff if you're an economic board gamer fan.
Yeah, right. The forecasting can be pretty fun once you see like, whoa, wait, we sold how much of that pocket game? Great, that means we can buy X, and numbers start to get really interesting when you see that we're starting to gain traction and become successful. And I really got to hand it to our publishing team, especially David Esbri, who's the main guy. He's like the creative genius behind all of this. He makes our job so easy, because he's constantly pumping out really, well thought out products with great designs, and it just makes it easy to sell. So
that's cool. And so in terms of going into that sort of English language board gaming market in North America, when would you say that first push started to happen?
Well, the first game we launched was Holmes, Sherlock, and Mycroft. It was a 2-player game, and we launched that in 2016. I don't know if you've played that one, but it's pretty fun. And the thing that I found, and I hope this is interesting to your audience, but the thing that I found is that you really need a catalog in order to start getting that snowball down the hill momentum.
Yeah.
So we really people didn't start to pay attention to us until we had, roughly 10 games. And then, so far we've published over 30 games, but I'd say between 10 and 12 are really solid offerings. And that's when, people started to notice us, and they would come to us at fairs and say, "Oh yeah, I saw you guys here last year. You're making really cool stuff." And then that's great. And that's when it starts to feel really good.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. And 2016 to me feels just yesterday, but I suppose it was 7 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Well, and considering that we've missed 2 years,
Right.
it just kind of evaporated because of COVID. So
yeah. In terms of that publishing and choosing what to publish, do you you mentioned your colleague earlier? Do you find that you often what do you look for when publishing games? Do you try to bring people in-house? Do you solicit design from freelancers? How is that aspect reviewed and put forward? And when you say, yeah, this is going to be a Devir title, and it's cool that you're so eclectic that it feels like a lot could fall under that umbrella. But I also feel that potentially opens up a lot more work and decision making as you're sifting through a lot of different designs. So how does that kind of come about, and what makes a Devir game get to those stages and hit the market?
Okay, well, first of all, we want to try and get designs from all of the countries in which we have operations. So we have a team of what we call local scouts. And they're like the first filter. And so a guy in Mexico has an idea for a game and he wants to pitch it to Devir. He'll talk to our scout in Mexico, and then they will say, might need some work, or this looks good. And then they'll pass it on to David, and he can then take it or leave it. You can probably imagine we get hundreds of pitches every year.
I'm sure.
So he's looking for really when he talks to designers and stuff, he'll tell them, just give me your best game, because we get people that come to us and say, what kind of theme are you looking for? What kind of format are you looking for? What kind of mechanics are you looking for? And he's always just like, no, just show me what your best game is, and we'll decide if it's something that we think is a fit. And then, of course, if we have a game that's too similar to whatever they're pitching, we'll probably have to pass on that, unfortunately. But so I see a lot, because I like to monitor the customer service line or the customer service email. And so I see a lot of the stuff that comes through, and we get some really interesting stuff. There's one that I really wish I could talk about Gen Con next year, because it's a very interesting story, but I'll have to wait on that one. But yeah, and then sometimes, like the story with Lacrimosa, for example, David was talking with the designers, and I guess during the phone call, they said, okay, we have a game that has to do with this. We have a game that has to do with this. We have a game that has to do with Mozart. And he told them, stop. I want that one. And so they went and started working on it. And about 6 months later, presented the first prototype. Had to do some revisions and things. But another 9 months later, we had the game almost in the can and ready to go. So
that's an award winner too, right?
Yeah. It's a really good one. One of our best sellers, and yeah, we're super psyched about that one, how it came out. It's one of my personal favorites from the catalog for sure. So
yeah, I've heard a lot about Lacrimosa. We play with a couple of the pink peg people, and they had brought a copy, and I was late to the game night and missed my seat at the table. So looking forward to my next shot.
Never be late, Brian. That's the rule here. You can't be late, or else you're going to miss out on a golden Devir gem.
Exactly.
The early bird gets the worm. Those blue peg, pink peg guys are great, by the way. We love it when they review our titles. So thanks to them for talking about our stuff.
In terms of I am curious. I got on a side tangent of question. I wasn't planning to ask this, but in terms of like not being able to talk about things, because
Mhm.
I know like oftentimes at WSBG we're not able to talk about things. There's a cycle to these things, right? There's a sense of when do we release the information and when do we start the marketing campaign, and I guess my question is for the viewers at home, because I've never really considered this. I've just accepted it as like, oh yeah, we can't talk about these sorts of things. When do you find is the ideal sort of life cycle to release information about stuff like if it's in its prototype stage, does it have to get past that stage? I'm just curious from your own sort of perspective of because obviously a lot of stuff needs to there's a flow of these things. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if you could provide any insight as to that process and how it relates in the development of the games in general.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that we've worked pretty hard to do over the past couple of years is um, really define a calendar of when we can release bits of information. So from the time that we decide on doing a game and when we're going to release it, we can say, for example, roughly 6 months prior, we're going to put it up on BGG. We'll put the cover on BGG.
Cool.
And then 4 months later, we can announce that we're going to be doing it via sell sheet to retailers and distributors. And then, just more information trickles out further and further. Maybe a month out, we'll publish the rule book. We have embargo dates for reviewers, bloggers, influencers, that sort of thing. But yeah, there's a calendar. It doesn't always play out like we hope. Like there's a funny story. We were at the Nuremberg Toy Fair this year, and our CMO, he's pretty active on Twitter, and he took a picture of Lacrimosa, and it was set out on the table, and put it on, and he tweeted about it, and that was okay because a lot of information was already public. But in the background was a picture of or was a prototype of Bitoku Rezutoran, which is the expansion to Bitoku, and of course, like an hour later, somebody had posted on BGG, "Oh, there's an expansion to Bitoku coming," and,
Yeah.
despite all of our efforts, sometimes they can get disrupted by our own CMO. So
The eagle-eyed internet is
oh,
always
totally.
there
Yeah,
to
nothing gets by people.
to spread it like wildfire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I often find like I assume that wouldn't have negatively impacted sort of Bitoku's release. I know Bitoku is incredibly popular and is has a ton of fans. I feel like potentially does that just drum up more excitement, right? People love leaks. People love the
Oh,
little
totally.
slips, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, in the end, it was more funny than anything, and
Yeah,
sure, it was great that people. It was nice to see that people were really excited about it.
right.
Because because we had people asking about the expansion, and then finally we're able to deliver it to them, and that'll be coming out. We'll launch that at Essen this year, so that's
Oh,
great.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And talking about Essen, talking about conventions and the typical release structure, I find is you can either go two ways. You release it at major conventions,
Mhm.
or you release it on Kickstarter and drum up like pre-sales in
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
Do you feel like that rings true to your knowledge as well in terms of like release structure, or would you ever
Sure.
drop a surprise game without any fanfare just to see what would happen?
I hate surprises like that. I would lose my mind, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you have to put some work into these things to make sure that people know that they're coming. I found
Hmm.
that if you just try to drop something into the market, there's so much competition and so much noise out there
Right.
that
Absolutely.
it's likely to get missed unless it's something like an expansion for Bitoku, which, people might think is great from the get-go. But no, we don't do Kickstarters. We sort of feel like if a game we're big enough, if a game
Yep.
is good enough that we're going to show the market that we bet on it because we think it's good, and you should too, right? And so we have 4 major launches every year, one for each quarter, and
Cool.
then we try to fill in with smaller titles along the way. And the things are centered around shows, so we try to have a launch for Gamma, the Gamma Trade Show. We have a launch for Gen Con, and a launch for Essen at the very least. And so, yeah, and then it kind of builds up over the course of the year. So like Gamma is a good release. Gen Con is a better release. And the granddaddy is going to be at Essen usually. And we try to make a lot of noise. And so we did Bitoku one year. We did Lacrimosa last year. And actually this year, we're going to be launching the White Castle, which is done by the same design team as Red Cathedral.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we're pretty stoked about that. It's like it's mechanically it's a very different game, but it is sort of the spiritual successor to the Red Cathedral in the sense that it's about a castle and it has a color in it, and it's a small same format, same price point, huge game in a small box kind of thing. And so you'll see if you go to Essen, you'll see a lot of noise about it. So we're really happy.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited for the White Castle, just because I am such a big fan of Red Cathedral, and the expansion was so good for it too. I felt like it developed. One thing I absolutely love, and commend Devir, and like try to sing Devir's praises until the house comes down, because of that concept of like huge game in a small box. I find, and the amount like. The value that you get out of the Red Cathedral is enormous to me. It's such an accessible price, and especially in this day and age of games, especially with Kickstarter as well, games getting like more and more and more expensive and getting into like the hundreds of dollars territory, to have a game like Red Cathedral, which sells for, I was looking on your website, $35.
Yeah.
Like $35 for such a solid, oh man, like if people who are watching haven't played the Red Cathedral, like I'm not just saying this because we've got Devir on the line. I just like I love that game, and so that's awesome to hear that is a consideration of that like big game in a small package. Do you find is there a difficult conversation to be had about the packaging and about that sort of marketing? Because I know it's the reason why people have large games is because then they can have more shelf space, right? Is generally, I think, the reason why people bloat their boxes up.
Well, I mean, historically, people tend to associate a price point with the size of the box. And
yeah, for sure.
You open it up and it's just a plastic insert and a deck of cards or something with this big box. And that's really annoying. And I think a lot of consumers these days are starting to tune into that and maybe rebel against that. And it's funny, the thing with the Red Cathedral was it was mildly contentious within the office, because you had some people who were in sales and marketing, especially, who are arguing, no, this is you have to put this in a bigger box so that people will notice it, and there's so much game here, and blah 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 blah. But the publishing team pushed back, and one thing that really influenced David's decision to try and do this was he was watching an influencer, Z Garcia, actually, from the Dice Tower. He had commented on one of our other games and how it was like a big game, or you got a lot for the size of the package that the game came with. So like the light bulb went off, and he was like, okay, let's see if we can deliver something similar. And so, yeah, even when you pick up one of our big games like Lacrimosa or Bitoku, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, they weigh 5 or 6 pounds, and there's a ton of components and a ton of game that you get, even in the big box format. So yeah, we definitely try to do that.
I think that's incredible. Like I wish more publishers did that. I feel like the pluses are so much more for me as like a consumer and like a person who loves games and loves playing games. Like, and the fact that, I mean, the game's got to be good, and it helps the Red Cathedral is just really good. Because it doesn't matter if it's a small game and it's bad. Well, then but yeah, I just think that's so exemplary, and like, and I'm definitely that doesn't surprise me that there was that contention and those butting heads in terms of that.
The good thing is that in our industry, I think, in our hobby, in our community, consumers are actually quite sophisticated, and they can see through a lot of that. Like, oh, we're going to make it really big so that we can trick you into buying it. No, they actually rebel against that. They open it up and they say, what's this insert? I don't need this. And they throw it away and put all the components in bags. or stuff like that. And so
yeah.
it's and David he's like an engineer. The guy is so talented. He's an artist. He's an engineer. He designs how all these things are going to fit into the box and maximize the space that's available. He's one great gamer, so he understands games really well. So the guy's just a savant, and we're lucky to have him on the team for sure. I don't want to let his head get too big, but
yeah, we'll say some mean
definitely
things about him later.
Working on the inserts and how everything fits into the box is definitely an art form.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
There's a lot to that,
Yeah. So when I open some of these boxes for the first time, I'm just amazed. Like, he managed to fit all of that in there, and think about how it's going to look once you've punched it out. And he thinks through these things very carefully. So it makes it easy for me when I have to go and present items to people and try and sell these things. It's great.
Right. So we're talking a lot about like how companies are listed on BGG, and how there's like one place that kind of catches all from everybody, kind of gets lumped as a publisher. Mm-hmm. But as a publisher, though, you actually have a bunch of different roles that you do. You're a publisher and a developer, and sometimes a distributor. Can you talk a little bit about those different roles that you don't get acknowledged for?
Well, since we started as distributors, I think a lot of the initial accounts that were created were going to be there have to be like 6 or 7 Devirs in Board Game Geek, and a lot of those were created as distribution accounts, and then had to so for example, sometimes you'll see Devir Iberia, which is started as the distribution arm for trading card games in Spain and Portugal. They'll upload the rule books or images or whatever for our games, and then when the customer service, Devir Americas will answer a lot of the inquiries and a lot of those questions, and that's actually me. Like I'm subscribed to all of our games, and I really like to see what the customers are saying, like what the feedback is from the ground up, and then as a developer, I don't even know if Devir Games, because it's not really a formal company, it's just the brand that we use. I don't even know if Devir Games has a formal account with BGG. I'm a little embarrassed to admit that, but we should probably check that out. So,
well, yeah,
that answers your question. But
well, we noticed too, like looking on BGG, I was like, oh yeah, we'll look at Devir. I'm like, check out their games, and it has like 628 games listed, because you're such a behemoth in the distribution area, right? In terms of
you got everything from a Feast for Odin and to Lacrimosa and tons of stuff in between. So.
And like localization, right? There's just that one sort of coverall of publisher, and then you get like 15 publishers, but it doesn't really account for like original IP versus like distribution or localization or those sorts of aspects.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really important point that I should have mentioned. So, we have the rights to tons of different games in Spanish and Portuguese, especially, but also some in Italian. And so for everything from Catan to Carcassonne to, like you mentioned, we had Feast of Odin. We had a lot of other titles that sort of got gobbled up by other bigger companies in the industry who shall remain nameless. And but yeah, we work with a lot of different publishers: Czech Games, Yellow, Hans im Glück, Cosmos, and so actually that was a big way for us to kind of jump into the board game business. We started with the War of the Ring back in 2000, and it was a real departure. Like the guy who's currently our CMO had to really push the partners to get on board with that project, but it ended up being super successful for us. And with that, we were able to go to Cosmos and say, hey, look, we are actual legit publishers. Can we do Catan? And the story just sort of goes from there. Right?
Yeah. That's cool. And then so what are the what are the sort of differences in logistics behind? I mean, like obviously publishing your own work, that's fine. You have the rights, you have the design come to you, you're doing all the legwork, etc. But what what's the logistics or even like contracts that happen behind the scenes of saying like, hey, yeah, I want we want Catan, we want Feast for Odin, and we'll do it in Spanish and Italian. Like,
Mhm.
how does that process work, and how does even if you could shed some light on localization and how that or the distribution aspect, those sorts of
Okay.
things.
So, a lot of this stuff I'm kind of removed from the day-to-day processes, but
For sure, yeah.
I do work right next to Xavi Garriga. He's the guy that's in charge of most of the localization projects. He's our global director of publishing and
Cool.
also a partner in Devir. And so, just talking with him, I've picked up a lot of things over the past few years, and essentially, we have partners that we want to work with and that are good partners, and we try to do at least some of their major releases every year. And so, and it's hard because we do probably 40 to 50 localization projects every year.
Wow.
And yeah, and not only do we not have the bandwidth to do more, because there's always stuff I'm like, oh, why couldn't we do this? But
Yeah, yeah.
the market can't necessarily absorb it, and you have limitations too in terms of like how many games your sales team can sell, how many games you can fit into your marketing communications. You can't do social media posts about every single game that we produce, and so he tries to stay with our core partners, the people that have been good to us over the years, and then bring in some interesting new things that he finds. He's meticulously combing news, listening to podcasts on top of BGG, trying to find interesting projects that might not have a publishing partner yet. One example might be Soviet Kitchen. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's a
No.
small format game that has an app that goes with it. It's really kind of crazy and well, out of the box. That's very cliche, but and then of course he's going to shows and like just walking around and trying to see if he sees anything interesting. So he's at Essen. He'll be at Gen Con this year, and once in a while hits on something big, or he's able to form new relationships just by meeting somebody like the Pandasaurus people, for example.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Because I can only imagine the amount of games there are so many games that are out there that
Yeah.
get published, right? And I feel like it's the two primary markets, or maybe not. You can correct me. It would be like in Germany at Essen, so in the German language, and then in North America, or
Right.
with the English language. But I feel like um, just due to the size and the fact that the major conventions are happen in
Mm.
those places,
Right.
um but I can only imagine that ever all the other languages need to play our awesome hobby as well. That's
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and we're really dedicated to the expansion of the board game category and the board game hobby in Spanish and Brazil and Portuguese, obviously. And
yeah,
so, we want to make Spanish the biggest language next to English and German if we
yeah,
can. And with some games, I mean, the guys on our Spanish team have done an amazing job. Like we sell more Spanish Catan than a lot of people. Like, and we sell more Carcassonne than lots of other languages. And so we're getting there. And having the distribution and the offices, the operations in all these different countries certainly, pardon me, certainly helps with that.
yeah, and already in place, right? Like having that
Right,
infrastructure
right, right.
gives you the ability. Do you know how do you still dabble in does Devir still do a lot of work in like sort of match distribution or LCGs or RPGs or in that
Oh
comics
yeah,
sector? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. We're still distribution partners with Wizards of the Coast, with Konami for Yu-Gi-Oh, with the Pokemon Company in certain markets, and really those are the three main ones. We try not to pick up any additional TCG lines because,
Right.
well, there's one that's interesting right now, but that's coming out here pretty soon. But we want to stay focused on our current partnerships,
Right.
and those three are especially are they're good enough from a strategic perspective and from a sales perspective that we don't really feel like we need to bring in much other stuff. But yeah, and role playing, I mean, we love role playing games. I got into this industry because I used to play D&D.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so we have our own division of role playing to produce Spanish role playing. We've got partnerships with Paizo and yeah, with Pathfinder, right? And for a bunch of other smaller RPG lines, as well as we distribute D&D for Wizards. And you know, in like Brazil's a really interesting market in terms of RPGs. It's I want to say maybe the third or fourth largest RPG market in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean it's a huge country, and
Right.
RPGs are really popular there. Like you won't find the popularity of RPGs comparable in any other country in Latin America, and part of it is because of the work that that my partners did back in the day when they were trying to sell comics and RPGs in the early '90s. You know, they were publishing a lot of Portuguese RPGs, and they managed to go. You know, well, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there in the early '80s, mid '80s in the U.S., there was a lot of chatter about how they were satanic or they would cause
Yeah.
kill
The satanic panic.
Yeah, all this stupid stuff. That really never took root in Brazil because they were able to go to teachers and write articles in novels or in books about how to, you know, they call them didactic books, like teaching tools for teachers promoting the use of RPGs. And so in the Brazilian mindset, RPGs are this really cool cultural thing, and they're not dangerous at all. So it's great. And over time, you know, the RPG market has managed to sustain itself there. So
That's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know that
yeah,
at all.
we love RPGs. So in fact, I'm still more of an RPG player at heart, although I do like Euros and all kinds of other games. So
What are your favorite RPGs?
well, I mean D&D, of course, you know, is great. But back in the day, I used to play a lot of Traveller and Call of Cthulhu, and it's funny. My I've t- I had a grandmother back in the day. I got the AD&D blue box for Christmas from one set of grandparents, and my other set of grandparents found out about it, and they freaked out because they were, you know, very religious and conservative, and so they offered me an Atari 2600 in exchange for my copy of D&D. And back then, like those Atari 2600s cost like $500,
Yeah.
and the D&D box was 20 or whatever. And I had to sign a contract saying that I would never play D&D again. And I mean, they were just concerned for my well-being, but you know, I was like 12 years old, so of course I signed. I wanted the Atari. But then all my friends were playing D&D, you know, a short time later, and so I was like, and I went into the store. I think it was a Walden Books, and they had, you know, Tunnels and Trolls and RuneQuest. And so I started playing Tunnels and Trolls, which was the same thing.
Yeah,
but it's not D&D. Right?
No, it wasn't
Contract
D&D.
was honored.
Yeah, and I tried to DM some sessions for my friends, and they were just like, you know, they really wanted to play D&D. So I played clandestinely for like 3 years and completely hid it from my family because everybody knew about the contract, and I felt sort of guilty, but I really wanted to play D&D.
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like it turned out okay, as it set you off on a lovely path.
Yeah, I never told my grandmother that I actually went on to sell D&D. I mean, I can't imagine.
Like, ooh, remember that contract?
Yeah. It wasn't legally binding. No.
Yeah, you should have had it notarized.
Right.
Where was the notary?
Talk to my lawyer.
That's all I'm saying. We'll get the Devir's team of contract writers on it to make sure that to find the loopholes. I want to go back to the White Castle, and I'm wondering if there's anything about it that you can tell me, because I'm excited about it. It's a purely selfish question.
Okay, well, what I can tell you is, honestly, I haven't played it. Okay, but I've seen it set up, and I know a little bit about it. It's a dice placement game, with a dice worker placement game. It's got like not a lot of really cool 3D elements, gorgeous artwork representing the Meiji Castle. And it plays in roughly the same. It's about the same level of difficulty, I've been told, as Red Cathedral.
Cool.
Maybe slightly more difficult. Plays in about the same time frame. But you can find more information about it. We'll probably be posting the rules toward the end of August.
Cool.
And you'll start to see more content coming out here very soon. Once we get out of Gen Con,
right.
Everybody in Devir is going to be thinking about the White Castle campaigns and things. So you'll be seeing a lot more content here in the near future.
That's true.
You can definitely bring a sneak peek out to WSBG. Well,
yes. Yeah, we will.
There.
Yeah. No, actually, that was in the plans. So to show it off. We'll have a copy,
Chris,
not a copy.
Say that time there.
Oh yeah, I'm going to shirk every other duty that I have to do in terms of like, sorry, run your own streams. I'm playing White Castle for 4 days straight.
Yeah. No, we will have to sit down. We'll go through a game session.
Nice, definitely.
So, yeah.
Cool, that's exciting. Yeah, because we're recording this before Gen Con has happened. It should be released after Gen Con. What does Gen Con look for Devir in terms of what you're hoping to get out of it? And I guess sort of what is your general convention going experience and structure and goals, like from a publisher standpoint?
That's a good part.
What does that like build up to the convention look like, and what's the general hope for like having a good convention for Devir? What would that look like?
Well,
sure has just happened in the past, when Gen Con has happened.
Yeah. No, it's funny because when you ask me like what I do, what I've been doing for the past like month and a half is been almost 80% Gen Con.
Cool.
And in previous years, we would try to. It's hard to get the proper amount of space that you really want. I mean, it's always sold out, and the Gen Con staff can't give everybody all the space they want. We have a 20 by 20 space, which we're happy with, but of course we'd like more. But it makes it hard to fit. It makes it hard to be able to promote everything that you want to promote.
Right.
So, in past years, we would try and represent all the games that came out over the previous year that hadn't been shown at Gen Con. But this year, we're taking a sort of a different approach, and we're just going to dive headfirst into our major release for this year, which is Ring Circus. And so 90% of the promotional activity that you see will be around this game. It's a game by Fabio Lopiano and Remo Consadori. Fabio is the designer of Kalimala and Autobahn and a couple of other things. He's pretty
nice games.
Yeah, they are. When I saw that we were getting him to do 3-Ring, I was super psyched because I love Kalimala. It's one of my favorite games. So that most of the promotion is going to be 3-Ring. When you're walking the hall, you'll see the stair risers that have 3-Ring advertising. The program bin headers are 3-Ring. Column wraps are 3-Ring. Our booth is 3-Ring.
Cool.
And we really want to make a lot of noise around this title because it's a very good game, and we're betting pretty heavily on that. And then you have the event hall. We've got demos of a variety of our games, most of the newer releases, including Jerusalem Anno Domini and Sabernac Forest, and Millefiori, which is one that's a Reiner Knizia game that's done really well for us. And so I was psyched because we have 9 demo tables. And we're running events constantly throughout the day. And the last time I looked, we had sold out almost all of the demo events. And so, nice. It's like 50 or 60 demo events, and I think only 3 of them or 4 of them are still open. And the ones that are open, they have like 1 seat left.
Right.
So, so that's how we try and, educate this year, how we're going to try and educate people about some of our more recent titles, let's say, without actually having to put them in the booth and do demos. And then in the booth, we'll have, open copies of 3-Ring Circus with people explaining how to play, a copy of Jerusalem Anno Domini, which was our big April release.
Mm-hmm.
And then some, we have this line of games called the Pocket Games, and they're $12 games, small format, quick card games, and we'll just be running constant demos of those games because they're always fun. they're easy to demo. So that's kind of what the booth will look like. But we will have. When does this air, by the way?
This should probably be airing August 19th, I want to say, around there.
August 19th. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so it'll be a little bit late then, but we're gonna have popcorn because it's a circus theme, and so we'll be selling popcorn. Fabio is going to be there, and we do have a couple things. The circus theme game takes place in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and back then, people didn't think twice about using performing animals. But as a company, this going back to what we stand for, obviously we're totally against the abuse of animals. We want to protect animals, but this was just a historical fact back then. So we have animals as performers in the game, but we're doing some things around the game to promote animal welfare, including we've made a partnership with a place called the Fundación Mona, which is it's an organization that rescues and rehabilitates performing animals here in Catalonia. I'm in Barcelona right now. And so like all the sale all the proceeds from the sale of the popcorn, for example, are going to go to them.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, and we even made these special promo packs that we're going to sell, and you can swap out the animal cards with kind of automatons in the promo packs, and then those will be for sale. They'll be $5 each, and then all of the proceeds from those will also go to the Fundación Mona, and we're selling those promo packs all over the world. So it's just a little way to kind of do the right thing.
That's a very classy way to handle a sensitive subject. So
yeah.
That's
really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, when I first saw the artwork, we had these conversations. I was like, performing animals. So we immediately got to, okay, we can't really take them out of the game, but how do we draw attention to this in a positive manner?
Yeah.
These are some of the things. There's also a little passage in the rule book explaining some of these things too.
Cool.
How our values have changed over time, and so we should be thinking about not supporting this sort of activity anymore.
Yeah, and plus, who wouldn't want to get cool animatronic robots to their circus, right?
Right.
That's what I'm like. I'm like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, much cooler than the alternative. That's awesome. That's wicked. And also all of those news articles that you saw about the big popcorn explosion at Gen Con that filled the whole hall with popcorn. Now we know the culprit. We've broken the case. But luckily everyone was able to eat their way out and it was fine. But I just remember those news articles that were happening back when Gen Con was live. It blew me away, but now we know.
Well, the good thing about I can't take credit for the popcorn idea, but now I can also say it wasn't my idea.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
If something goes wrong, it's not my fault.
Oh, that's great. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Thank you for jumping on and hanging out with us. We always like to finish though. We talked about RPGs, but I'm curious, other than a Devir title, but even throw in Devir titles if you like. We can do a couple of different categories. But what are some of your favorite games, and what are the games that you enjoy, and other publishers that you enjoy? I guess it gets a little nebulous if since you do distribution for so many publishers, you don't want to say that you got one favorite over the others. But just in terms of your own personal preference and favorite games, what do you like to play?
I'm really a big fan of Daniele Tascini's games. So like Teletum, Marco Polo 2, Teotihuacan. I've got it right back here on the shelf. I love his games, and so I've been devouring a lot of that stuff lately. I love the Italian school. So like one of my favorite games of all time is Grand Hotel Austria.
Oh yeah,
Lorenzo Il Magnifico, another really good one. So yeah, I'm more into like the heavier Euros. So like when we do things like Bitoku and Lacrimosa, I get very excited.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have to pitch some of my favorite Devir games. One
Of
that
course.
came out a while back, and we did quite well with it at the beginning, especially. But these days, is sort of flying under the radar because of the popularity of our other titles. But one that I really like is called Silk, and it's not a big meaty Euro, but it's insanely tactical, and every game is really different because of the way you set up the tiles and the dice rolls, and you determine what you can do and that sort of thing. So those are some of them.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to getting to Gen Con. I already have a list of 3 or 4 things that I want to try and buy while I'm there, because here in Barcelona you don't get everything that you can get in the US market. So
Right.
taking an empty suitcase, take advantage of the opportunity to pick up a few things, and we'll see how it goes.
Nice. What are you hoping to get your hands on at Gen Con then?
Well, I'm eyeing Distilled and also Whistle Stop. I heard that one was a pretty good one, and some of the Vladimir Suchy games. I can't remember this Pragna something. It's about
Oh yeah, Pragna Regni.
Yeah. And then also the one from, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but there's a new one from Czech Games that is a city building game, really heavy Euro. It's got like this cool black cover with a silver coin on the front.
I can picture it as well.
I can look it up. Well, I don't want to.
I'll put the it's down below right now. Editing Chris will have put it in there.
All right, cool. My apologies to Czech Games for not remembering, but the game does look cool. And so I want to check that one out.
Cool.
So yeah, that's it.
Nice. Well, one more question that just popped into my head when we were talking about this before we go is the sort of the life cycle of Devir original titles. I'm curious in terms of like print runs and how a new print run is determined. Can you shed any light on that aspect of it in terms of deciding like, oh, this has been out of print for a while, we're going to give it another push? Maybe it's a larger question than like a finishing up question, but I just am curious.
No, it's a good question. We're still learning, right? Because this is new. Some of this is still new to us, and especially COVID really, like COVID's smack in the middle of the learning curve.
For sure.
Distorted a lot of our decision making.
Right.
So we try not to be out of print of any of our any of our titles. We feel like that sends the wrong message to the market, and we are always sort of kicking ourselves when we underprint, even though it's good news. It's a good problem to have.
Right.
We would rather have a small tail of stock to meet people's demands. And usually we try and keep on top of the inventory. We watch it, and then when we think we're going to need more in about 6 months, we'll go back to print. We'll go back to print and try and gather input from all the different offices. That actually helps because if you can say, okay, Colombia needs 500 and Mexico needs 1,000 and Spain needs 3,000 and the US needs 4,000, that gives enough volume to go back to print. And then of course it's going to depend on the type of game. Unfortunately, not all games can be evergreens, and some of them will have to just sort of peter out over time. That's probably more true with some of the pocket games, the small format games, than with the bigger ones. But yeah, we're trying to. One main thing with forecasting is you always go back and say, when you're doing the initial forecast, you say, okay, how much did we sell of this thing that was similar to anything that we're launching? So it was great to have Red Cathedral under our belts, because that really helped me try and anticipate the demand for the White Castle, for example.
Right.
So I went back and said, all right, I sold X amount of Red Cathedral over this time period. I want to make sure that I have enough for a calendar year, and so this is going to be the number. Right.
Cool. Yeah. And then is there sort of like a centralized warehouse then for when you go to DevirGames.com and you order a game straight from there, that's where you're pulling it from, I assume?
Well, we have warehouses in each of the countries where we are, so
that makes sense.
So we have a warehouse in Portugal actually that services Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and then we have a warehouse in Florida, which in the US, which services North America, and also some of the countries in Latin America where we don't have offices. And then the other main offices have their own warehouses and distribution facilities You know, because it's important for retailers to be able to feel like they can buy a game, it's sort of hand to mouth, right? They don't have to buy it and sit on a bunch of inventory. And when they're doing their own importations,
yeah,
it makes them a little more reticent to kind of dive into the category. And we want to make it easy for them.
right. And making sure that it's always, if a retailer wants a Devir stock, they can get it. And that's cool.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
well, awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. This has been super fun. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours, but I'm going to let you get to the rest of your evening, because I know it's later over there. And for all of you listening at home, again, stay tuned. Myself and Brian, we're going to tell you how to win yourself a copy of the Red Cathedral. And if you already have the Red Cathedral, good for you. You're smart. Well, we're going to give you a copy of the Contractors expansion as well. So stick around, and we'll give you information on how to win that. That's just something that we like to do with all of these series, is to highlight a game, and what better game than the one that people can play at the World Series of Board Gaming in an awesome tournament. Oh man, I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you very much, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. Looking forward to meeting you in person at the event.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Well, that was a heck of a lot of fun. That was really fun. I really like talking to publishers as well. You know, like I'm a mechanics person at heart. I love getting nitty gritty with mechanics and like design and development, but also the whole aspect of it fascinates me. Maybe that's just the board gamer in me, and the optimization, like we were talking about, the economy and finance and all those sorts of things. But I find it really cool, and Matt was so lovely to talk to.
Yeah, it's great. I like the idea that we the whole idea of the expansion of board games. So we expand from designers into publishers, and I like the idea that you know, we're the World Series of board games, and I do know that it's hard for some people in parts of the world to get to us in Vegas. But I do like the idea, you know, talking to publishers that have a growing presence in Latin America and growing the game down there, and just it's exciting to hear how big board games is in various other parts of the world that you don't think about on the everyday basis. So it's kind of neat getting that world perspective of things.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why the World Series exists, really, right? Like our hobby is growing. Our hobby is all encompassing and deserves to be across global lines. You know, you sit down with a person and you can just always have, doesn't matter where you're from, the different walks of life, whatever, you still can have a great time sharing and enjoying in this wonderful hobby that we all love and feel so passionate about, that we spend our free time hanging out and chatting about it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just lovely. It's lovely thinking about that global perspective. That's exactly
who knows?
Right.
Who knows? We might have a winner from Brazil this year. So
yeah.
Never know. That'd be exciting, right?
That'd be exciting. Hey, whoever the winner is, it's always going to be exciting when they walk away with that $25,000. I'll tell you that. So if you are interested in participating in the World Series of Board Gaming, maybe you want to participate just in the Red Cathedral tournament, there is a specific Outer Ring tournament that is a great price, $150. For a little bit more, you get your shot at $25,000. It's a great event. If you're interested in getting tickets, feel free to check out WSBGVegas.com. That's happening end of September 24th to the 28th in Las Vegas. But also, we've got a giveaway announcement to make, or a contest to drum up. What are they going to have to comment down below, Brian, to win a copy of Red Cathedral? What should they do?
Favorite historical building?
That's a great prompt. Yeah, let's do it. Favorite historical building. And you can be as loose with the term historical as you would like. If you're like, I don't know, buildings, you can say, my beautiful convenience store down the street. They've always got my sweets. That's acceptable as well. Yeah, but you gotta have a focus on the building and tell us why you like that building. It could be the White Castle, or the White Castle down the road where you get all your delicious burgers. We don't have any White Castles in Canada, but I know I've never been to one. But
I've had a belly bomb or two. So
Maybe with the emergence of this game, I might finally get there. So yeah, drop that down in the comments below to have your chance to win a copy of Red Cathedral. If you already own Red Cathedral, we'll get you Red Cathedral Contractors. It's a really good expansion. The only downside of Devir's games packing so much in the box is that it's really hard to fit the expansion of Contractors in the Red Cathedral box. I have both, but then again, when you have both, it's now then the size of what a normal box would take up. Yeah. And so I don't mind carrying them around because I like it with and I like it without. I think the base game is really good, but I also think Contractors adds a little something, which is nice. So drop that down in the comments below, and then be sure to tune in to WSBG YouTube channel, where we will have all sort of our news updates, and I will announce the winners over there in 2 weeks' time. You got to check that out and contact me. That's part of the stipulations of this contest, to make sure that we don't have to deal with sort of YouTube scammers in the comments. That's why I always like to announce it personally. It makes it a lot easier.
So one thing our audience might not know is that every week you're putting out a news feed that explains what's going on at WSBG. And that's where you got to go if you want to claim a prize. That's where you want to be. You want to check that out to find out what you've won. Because we would hate to have people like win something and not be there to have seen the video. That would be a sad story.
That's true. And that's, again, you want to hear it straight from my mouth to see if you're the winner, so that we avoid. I've done giveaways in the past where we've dealt with comments, and then other non-me will jump into the comments and say, hey, you won. And it's just to avoid all of that nonsense, to make sure that we get it into the right hands and you don't have to worry about any scammers trying to get you to pay for shipping, which we would never do. So after you check us out, if you're checking us out on the Dice Tower, you can always hop down if you want more information about World Series of Board Games, and hop to the World Series of Board Gaming YouTube channel, hang on the subscribe button, give that a little bang bang, and we'll be good to go. That's it. We will be good to go. That's exactly right, Brian. So check that out over there in 2 weeks' time to see if you are a winner. Brian, is there anything else to say?
Yeah, well, when you come out to Vegas, give Matt and Chris and I a high five. So
that's true. Yeah, and check out an exclusive look before Essen at the White Castle in Vegas. You can be the first to try it, baby. So that's pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. That's worth coming. Yeah, great. Otherwise, thanks everybody for watching. We will be back next week with another interview with someone else. Who's it going to be? I guess you're going to have to tune in to find out. My name is Lacrismosa.
And Patoku Brian.
And as we say in Vegas, get in the game.